But I think we're ready to get started. Did you guys hear me? Yes, okay. So call the meeting to order at 4:00. October 12th, Transportation Alternative Planning Committee meeting here in Scio Township. First, call the meeting to order. Welcome the public. Thanks for attending. Trying to make sure I'm admitting everyone that's on that list here. So trying to we'll juggle a few different things here. We'll work through this. First, we'll need a motion to adopt the agenda for October. There's a motion out there to do that.
Yes, I so moved.
I'll second. Support, sorry.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Okay, agenda is adopted.
Progress.
Next is approve the minutes from September. The motion to approve the minutes from September. Support. Support by Patrick. Any changes or amendments to the minutes? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Ayes have it. Minutes are approved. Now we're on to public comments. This is an opportunity for the public to speak. Given 3 minutes to speak on any topic. First of all, there are some people here in the audience at Scio Township. I guess first we'll open up to people here at Scio Township. If they would like to speak to our TAP committee, then we'll open it up to anyone out there that'd like to speak. Anyone here at this point in time? Seeing no hands. All right, let's see. Okay, I guess it looks like David Reed has hand up. So go ahead, Mr. Reed.
Mr. Reed.
Okay, David.
David Reed, Scio Township. I was reading through your packet and it looks like you are still considering a renewal of the current roads SAD. And that can't be done. You cannot use the Act 188 for specific, for community-wide benefit. Act 188 is for specific neighborhoods, specific roads, and it has to impart a general benefit, or excuse me, a specific benefit to the parcels that are paying into it. We did the 188 incorrectly. The board did the 188 incorrectly. Lou threw some pixie dust in our eyes and said that fixing all the roads in Scio Township would impart a benefit to all of the houses. And that may be true, but that's not what Act 188 says. So the proper way to do a community-wide benefit is with a millage. And if you think you need $663,000 a year or 6.6 million, you would be able to do that with a roughly a 0.42 to 0.45 millage. The current taxable value is 1.5 billion. 0.42 will give you basically $84 on a $200,000 house, which is $1 less than that person would be paying now. Obviously, that would be double on a $400,000 house and half that on a $100,000 house. Overall, you'll get 600 and overall you'll get, or after the DDA takes their share, with a 0.42 mil, you'll get just under $300,000, or excuse me, $6 million in just a little over $6 million in 10 years. DDA takes their share from their incremental value, based on their incremental value. So for you to do what you want to do, again, I think you have to define what you want to do in order to advertise this thing to the public. But if you're going to do it, even if you could do it with an SAD, you would have to be very, very specific about the roads you're going to do and what the benefit for each house on that road would be. The way to go, I believe, especially if you're going to merge the two groups together, is with a mill, so that you could, at the end, you can merge the two millages together. Obviously 0.42 and 0.65 gives you, 10 point or 1.0 and 1.1 basically mills for parks and roads. And it looks like you want to add pathways to the road millage. And, that wasn't necessarily the intent, but, or at least I should say the roads people want to add pathways to the road millage. That was not the intent, but if in fact you want to merge those two together, then so be it. But you have to do it with a millage, not an SAD. Thank you.
Thank you. Next person has his hand up is Jonathan. So
Hi, and good afternoon. Thank you for taking my comment. Just briefly, folks.
Say your full name, Jonathan.
Sorry, this is Jonathan Greenberg, 6250 Park Road. Did you get that? Okay. Yeah, I just wanted to point out that the folks who are coming to the meeting and participating in the meeting are not members of an audience. We're either constituents or residents. Thank you.
Okay, looks like that's all the people that have their hands up. So with that, we'll move on. We'll close public comments at this point and move on to approval of the consent agenda as listed. Your package, any comments, questions? Now is there a motion to approve the consent agenda?
Yeah, I would.
Liz will move.
I'll support.
Steve will support. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That's carried. Tap on new business. I guess first thing up is Marjorie Kemp is submitted her resignation. So I think it's effective. I forget the date, but she will no longer be with us. And I think quite a few of the members on TAP and on Parks, some of their appointments are expiring at the end of this year. I think hers was one of them. So obviously we enjoyed having her on the committee, but I know with other priorities it gets challenging getting here. So that's why she at this point I think step down. So, but thanks for her service. So next item is a report from Parks and Pathways Director Anna. So if you'd like to give us a brief update, appreciate it.
Hi, yes, I will. I also have an update from Chris. Would this be the place where I would share that, the pros plan update?
Sure, we can do that one. We'll do the one, then we'll do the pros plan after that. That'd be great.
Great. So is it possible to mute? There's like some feedback from me speaking to all of you coming back to me.
So mute us.
Yeah, I like how that does. Thank you. Great. So the main update I wanted to give is that on the website under the community tab, there's the Parks, Preserves, and Pathways section, and that is under renovation and will hopefully be fresh and ready by the end of the week, maybe the beginning of next week. And I'm hoping to put a whole section on there about the zebra road pathway. There's currently a section on there that is a bit out of date, but I've been receiving a lot of questions that I think just a map would solve. And so that will be up there soon. So keep an eye out for that and feel free to reach out if you have ideas. Another update is about Scio Outside, the community engagement program that started pretty strongly, I think, last week. We had, great attendance out at Sloan. And while I think a lot of this program will be Parks and Preserved focused, ideally, there will be pathway involvement, keeping the pathways clean, and also just maybe walking pathways to the preserve we'll be working on. So community members can understand how the pathways connect all of the parks and these things work together. And now I will transition into Chris Nordstrom's pros update. Okay, Chris wanted us to know that he's finishing up the last chapter of his update. We should keep an eye out for that, perhaps tomorrow morning for review. And that link will be sent to TAP the Parks Advisory Board and LPC for review. And then that review will be 30 days long. And then after that 30-day review, after little things have been corrected, it'll go to a Board of Trustees meeting. And then after hopeful adoption by the board, then let's see, after, I'm reading his notes here. Adoption by the board will hopefully happen after the hearing is complete, contingent upon making any necessary changes brought up at the meeting. And this should take place at the second board meeting in December. And official meeting minutes and resolutions will be collected after they are approved at the first meeting in January. Then all of this will be uploaded to the MDNR website and it will be officially submitted. And that is the info I have that I meant to pass along. Thanks. We are still muted.
And said, I am a taxpayer and a resident. It's your call though. Simple question.
We do have Suzanne does have a question.
Yeah, there were 2 points that I just wanted to follow up with for all of the people participating is what is the current maintenance plan for the paths? That way they are free of debris and for winter maintenance. And then, I'm sorry, Anna, could you repeat when that public hearing for the pros plan is for all of us? I definitely missed that. Thank you.
So Roy, I wasn't clear. Did you deny me the chance to ask Anna a question?
Yes.
Okay, I'll remember that.
As far as the maintenance plan goes, that's part of my position, which I stepped into 2 months ago. And so I've been doing a lot of onboarding and that is something that's definitely in my mind and will become pressing as winter comes around. So know that I'm on it and I don't have an answer quite ready yet. And then to your question about Chris's info, after the 30-day review period where LPC, Parks, and TAP looks at everything, then we will hold a public hearing at a regularly scheduled Board of Trustees meeting.
So the date hasn't been set yet, so that to be determined, I guess, would be soon, but to be determined the actual date. Okay, thank you. Do you guys, anyone else have a question for Anna on her report or the pros plan?
Good job, Anna.
Yeah.
I guess not, so thank you. I guess next on the agenda is merging Parks Advisory Board and TAP together. This was briefly discussed at the last meeting. Like I said, there are a fair amount of the members' terms are expiring, so that this might be an opportunity to do that and merge the two. We do have a lot of our money comes from it does come from the same pot. Obviously, sometimes you can get outside funding through different committees, but a lot of the TAP projects are you consider them linear parks versus a set park. So that's why some of this discussion has been happening. So like, does this make sense to have two separate committees? I know last year when we were doing the budget, we were getting with parks, and then we were getting together trying to figure out how much money was going to be set aside for parks versus TAP. If it was all under one committee, then they look at the whole program. Obviously, Anna is overseeing both of them, and she's going to be doing with just one committee as far as that. I simplify her life a little bit. Obviously, would reduce the number of people on these committees, because right now I believe it's 9 and 9, or some number close to that. So that maybe just one committee of 9. There's others that are appointed from, like Liz, you're from LPC, and then I think Chris is from planning. Obviously Patrick's from the Township Board. So some appointments are already sort of set, but then outside members. So I don't know if anyone had any more thoughts on that or.
Just a question. TAP was split off from what? Wasn't it part of something?
You know, it was created
Oh.
5 years ago. No, 5 years ago.
And was the idea generated from the parks or was it just a
Not that I'm
bigger?
aware of.
Okay. I just didn't know if we were just kind of going back to the way things used to be or if this
No.
would be, okay.
It's created out of whole cloth.
Okay.
5 years ago.
You know, a good question, how long the park's been around, I really don't know that. I don't think Hannah might not know that either because she's been on board for 2 months now, that thing. But yeah, I'm guessing it's been around longer. I know there were some TAP type committees a while ago when they, when they first envisioned Zeep Road, some of that probably 10 more years ago, but I'm not sure there was official committee by the Township Board. But yeah, some of that, I guess you could probably potentially take back to the records. I'm not sure exactly when the first Scio Township Park was committed, when the committee started either, to tell you the truth. But I think my understanding, there was a Parks Committee and then some of the ideas like maybe we should do TAP, I think get more focus on the trails, but at the end of the day, we do sort of have similar focuses.
Yeah.
Obviously now there was one appellate village path passed for parks and pathways. So it was, one revenue source. Like I said, there are state grants that, parks could, DNR trust fund, for example, linear trails could request money for, and have to receive money for, and parks, fixed park could do the same thing. So more lean in position they can such fund, but having them combined, it could still, work just the same. Norm, did you guys discuss this much at the parks meeting?
No, the main thing we were trying to figure out is when people's terms expired and who would carry over and that type of thing. So there wasn't much additional discussion about the merging of positions that would be separate now and be merged in maybe one person.
So then you had your hand up.
Probably as the resident transportation planner, I think that one of the core charges of TAP was transportation options. We are leaning very, very heavily into non-motorized. We're not addressing the mobility challenge. We're not addressing, any of that sector of the community. We're also not addressing people who don't want to buy cars or people who cannot afford cars. Please remember that car ownership is a privilege. And I am fearful, and I think this was actually raised in the minutes from last meeting that I reviewed, that that's going to be like completely pushed to the side. That is a concern of mine. And I think even with some of the millages that we kind of taxed ourselves on was for transportation alternatives. I'm still waiting for bus. I'm still waiting for, I don't know, a crosswalk across Jackson Road. I don't know if anyone has tried to do that by using the bus. It is horrible because you can't do it. Like the crosswalks are a mile, if not more, in between. So it creates really dangerous conflict points for pedestrians, bicyclists, anyone in a mobility assistant device. It forces people to make very, very dangerous maneuvers. So I would just, if that is the will of, the Board of Trustees to consolidate, I really hope that we keep the charge of looking at alternative transportation, considering a lot of the other topics that have come up with climate change and neutrality. You can't get there by just strictly everyone driving, and not everybody wants to drive. So I just really want to hammer that home as I boarded the bus this morning. Please consider, non-car driving as we are having these conversations. Thanks.
Yeah, thank you. And actually, if you go back to the original road millage, the township-wide SAD, those discussions back in 2012, 2013, that was 1 in 10, well, the 10% that was set aside was trying to address some of the concerns out on Jackson Road. So that was, those were in those early discussions, like the transportation, how we're going to provide transportation. And then it wasn't included in the mill. I mean, when the township board approved it, that wasn't included. And then when the township board amended it in 2020, they didn't have a proper public hearing. So the 10% that was supposed to be set aside in the road millage, the $500,000, that was really going to be focused a lot on transportation for, alternative modes of transportation, hasn't really materialized. But I guess that could be an opportunity if the township moves forward on either renewing the township-wide special assessment district or looking at a millage. And if they would do that, and there was support for putting that 10% back in, putting it in at the beginning, explaining it and making sure that was money set aside. I mean, that's one way. And I'm well aware that was the intent back then. That could be the intent, moving forward. But then, there is that dedicated source for alternative transportation, just not people that drive cars or trucks or whatever in this township. Because Suzanne's right, and not everyone can afford to be a car. They're not getting more and more expensive car insurance, and all those things add up. We do have the ride that does service and wave services, Scio Township. So I think that which is also up in 23, 24, I forget the date when that's up. So I think all those things, I think we need as a township and as members on this committee, not just look at, it's not just recreation that we're always focused on. Some people use this as transportation to get to work. And that's why I think some business owners along Jackson Boulevard supported the bus route, because that's how some of their employees get to work from wherever they're coming from, Ann Arbor, Ypsilanti, or wherever to get out here. So I think that's something to consider as we move forward. So good point. Thank you. Let's say you might have another follow-up question.
Yeah, I'm just, I really want to, oh, sorry about the echo. I just want to push back on the 10%. We've spent decades, 50, 60, 70 years on like the road improvements, and 10% of $500,000 for somebody who can be killed by walking. I'm just saying, like, I'm trying to elevate like the importance of the amount of pedestrian and bicyclist fatalities. We get those notices from, the Michigan Department of Transportation. They have those on those active signs as we're driving. 10% really seems like a drop in the bucket, given the billions of dollars that we spend a year for the motoring public. And so I would just ask that we consider what is appropriate. Do we need to set a target? Can we just have particular projects that maybe are of greatest importance instead of that percentage? Thank you.
The audio is still muted for us.
So, right?
No, she can't.
So can I say that
Start
again?
over yet, please.
So I'm coming from LPC. It's been our understanding that we have to be actually physically present in the meeting in order to participate in the discussion or to vote. And that Patrick sends out his agenda with that information in there. So I just wanted to ask about that.
Okay, I thought it was my understanding they just couldn't vote on items.
No,
So
they
you're
can't.
saying they
It's
can't.
it's either one.
So why would someone sit in a meeting remotely?
Yes, that's the question. Unless to just know what's going on and how the
So
discussion.
it's sort of interesting. So the public can speak,
In
the
public
outside.
comments only.
right? But our own members can't speak.
In public comments, they could, yes. That's my understanding of how it works.
Okay.
This is Pam Boyd, and that is, Liz is very correct.
So if you can't attend, you can't speak.
You can speak in public comments. Anyone has 3 minutes during public comment to speak. But the members of the committee have to be present in order to speak or vote, in order to participate.
So how about Anna's comments?
Well, she's
technically-
not a member of our commission, you see.
So you can get a report from someone on the
We
outside?
can get, I think we can get remote reports. My understanding, and Patrick clarified for me, was that members of the commission have to be physically present.
Understanding, I never heard any comments about a staff person.
Yes, like Chris could give his report remotely is what my understanding has been.
And on the board, we have people do presentations, but remote participation, I think, is limited. If you're a board member, you can participate, but only, you can't really, speak during the meeting itself,
Yes.
unless it's during the public comments.
That's how we've done it in LPC, yeah.
So you technically really can't participate.
That's right, that's right. And the idea is that people try to come, yeah.
Okay, well, thanks for helping clarify that.
I have a question also.
Okay.
I wanted to ask for the people who've been involved for a long time, how do you feel about the combination of parks and TAP? Do you think it's a good idea? Do you think it'll work better that way, or what's your view of it? Because I'm pretty new to this.
I think that, also thanks, Jeffers. I mean, we're all relatively new to TAP, so it's not like, it's like this is how it used to go.
Okay.
Patrick, I guess, probably the
I'm the only original member. left.
senior member, everyone else is, I'm sort of a year or less type. So I don't know. So I guess that's what I was saying. I can't really say anything. I've been involved in the roads program, but not the TAP. And I guess I was involved with the TAP indirectly, but never as an official member until, the last year or so. Patrick, you've been involved with TAP for how long now?
Since the beginning 5 years ago.
Okay.
So what do you think, Patrick? Does this seem as if it would work well to combine the two?
I think, having typed up minutes, Steve and I both were concerned that the TAP efforts might get lost. And so we want to make for sure that something is done to retain the alternative transportation piece. And the person who could not speak but did articulated really well the downside of losing the TAP related initiatives. I am concerned about that. And, it's David Reed earlier in the first part of TAP argued all the time, made the point all the time that we needed to think about electronic vehicles, charging stations along Jackson Boulevard, Jackson Road. Those things I fear will get lost.
I see.
And so it's really, I think it makes a lot of sense to do this. There's a lot of synergies, helps Anna. The idea that our pathways will help us get to parks, link the community to the parks. I think that's fabulous. I think that's really important. On the road side, with the road initiatives that we're doing, that might be funded by the township-wide initiative. I hope those don't get lost somehow.
Yeah.
The sidewalks don't get lost.
I can see that, yeah.
And so I'm really worried about what gets lost if there's not important representation from TAP on that committee. So, but ultimately, I think it makes a lot of sense, but we just got to be careful that there's a couple people from TAP that can represent the positions that were articulated earlier. So.
And you think it'll work to have a smaller group where just, maybe half of them are trails type people, pathways people, and other half are parks people?
Parks people, yeah.
It could work together, you
Yeah,
think?
I think so, yeah.
Well, I've served on Parks Advisory Board for several years before joining the board. And I think it's a perfect opportunity to combine because we have very similar objectives, I think, which are to, get people engaged, get them outside, get the community more active, take advantage of the parks and preserves that we have, and obviously connecting to them is really an important issue. And I can understand your concern about potentially losing the focus on alternative transportation and things like she articulated about non-motorized vehicles. But I think that we can work together, to create a really dynamic group that can represent both organizations. And I think it's a good thing because we can speak with one voice. It can be a point of contact for Anna. Instead of diffusing her between two different groups, we can kind of maintain the connection with her directly. And my expectation would be that Parks and TAP could work together very well.
Yeah.
I think one of the problems might be there's so much information in the TAP program and about concepts and legal setbacks and all these kinds of things. Whereas the Parks group is all about nuts and bolts, garbage cans, trimming the trails and things like that. There's sort of a level of information that's going on that's at different levels. And it seems to me you probably have to have 2 meetings a month to get it all covered with one committee. And I think that's asking a lot of committee members who are probably also out there working on these things in the field too. So I think it might be a challenge to find people who can donate that much time and effort to something like this. But it certainly there are things that are relative to both groups that would be better discussed in a joint session than brought in piecemeal. So not sure what the answer is, but you're going to need a lot of dedicated people to pull it off if it's a bigger group.
I'd be curious, I guess. I'm completely new to all of this. I haven't been on committees before. This is my first time, so I'm really learning how all this works. But I don't know if it's slicing it too thin, but would it be considered a merge or an absorption? Would the Parks Committee take on TAP, or would it be sort of an equal joint, partnership in that respect, so that a lot of the things that TAP is working on, not because Parks would say, oh, we don't care about that. It's partly normal. You just said, how much time do we have and what is our mission and what are we supposed to be doing? So if either A, we somehow go from 9 to 12 people on a committee, if that's even possible, does that in some way kind of spread some of that information demand through more people so that, I don't know, it's not a bunch of subcommittees working together, but we could take on tasks with a few more people, still have one voice, one outlook, and share some of those concerns between the committees, maybe more evenly and maybe not necessarily 2 meetings a month. I don't know. But it would be interesting to me to find out, is the idea that they would merge, or is it that TAP would just sort of become part of Parks, but Parks agenda would still be the main focus? And whenever TAP's, ideas or needs could be addressed, then if there's time, they would do that. Then I would really worry, I guess, if that's how it's going to go. So if it was a merge, probably better than an absorption, I guess.
Yeah, I guess my understanding, it is more of a merge and absorption side. And I think at the end of the day, it's the people that do get appointed, how many are there people from TAP, are there people from Parks? And so hopefully if it is 9, 7, 11, 12, whatever, is that balance. I have worked with a lot of different townships. For the most part, they do just have, sort of one committee, like in Pittsfield Township, Superior Township, Scio Township, obviously the bigger townships, maybe like York Township. And I think, I'm not sure like the city of Ann Arbor, but I'm guessing they probably just have one Parks Commission, I think, and they have, that's all encompassing. So I think that sort of one of the things is, you know, some of the stuff we are doing at TAP is recreation. Then there's also that transportation component. So I think that's where I think it's important that the roads part of it is also addressed, because like I said, you know, some of it is just trying to get people to our parks, get outside, and enjoy South Township's beauty and recreation, and enjoy that. But for some people, it is getting them to that bus stop and getting them to their job, getting them, you know, to the township hall if that's what, you know, what they need to get. So it's more a utility reason to get there rather than just a recreation, so transportation. So I think that's where make sure that that part of it doesn't get lost in 100% all recreation versus whatever percent you're getting. You know, maybe it's not a percentage, but you know, what are some overreaching goals? One of the goals that we talked about here is, you know, ensure that South Township is connected to the city of Ann Arbor through non-motorized, you know, South Church Road, at, you know, Jackson Road, at any, you know, Mill Road, all roads that South Church to tie in Liberty. Make sure those connections are as safe and efficient as possible. And I think same thing even with bus routes, you know, how are we connected? Because at the end of the day, people either come out to South Township for stuff or go into Ann Arbor, vice versa. I think trying to make those as seamless as possible should be the priority. Obviously, that'd be so. No.
Well, one of the other things I'm concerned about is who do you go to if you want information about the parks? Like right now, we have Andy, who's our chair, and if you want to get the latest word, you go right to him. If you have 4 or 5 persons on parks in your new now expanded committee, who do you go to there to get the definitive word or something? You know, you spread out the information requirements amongst a different group of people now, and it might be harder to figure out how to coalesce the joint opinions into something that a person at another level, like Anna or somebody, could use.
No, that is, but I guess the other hand is, thankfully we do have Anna now that, you know, plus at least now we have, because we didn't have a staff person, so there's even more so that Andy had to carry the ball on a lot of these projects because he, you know, he was, or someone under him, and, you know, same here under, you know, TAP, some of these are, you know, our committee members. So at the end of the day, you really do want someone full-time, or, you know, at least someone at a township that can take on those responsibilities, because, you know, members of these committees were volunteers and, you know, sort of come and go as we, you know, to some degree. So I think that's where you need the longevity as someone at the township level. So thankfully we have that, and I think we all raise good points. I'm not sure exactly what the full process is going to be.
Are we asked to make some sort of recommendation, or are we just discussing?
At this point, I think we're just discussing it.
Okay.
I have not been asked if we're supposed to make a recommendation or, you know, pass anything. It's really been a discussion. Ultimately, it's going to be the township board that decides this. And I'm not sure when that is actually, you know, what that timeline is. I don't know. You hear anything, Patrick, on that?
Well, I just know that there's been discussion about it, and I think the sentiment is that it makes sense, that it might be a good thing for there to be fewer committees, have them, you know, merge together and more focused, so that you know, there's a direct contact with the board. I think that there's support at the board level for merging the two, but I don't know what your discussions have been with Andy. I know there's going to be a lot of attrition off of, I think, both groups coming up because of terms ending. And some people are choosing not to, you know, serve again. So maybe that's an opportunity to merge the two groups into a cohesive bunch that, you know, can serve both objectives for parks and preserves, as well as pathways and alternative transportation.
It does seem to me it would be, to Nora's point, it's important to really carefully structure it and think through how we're gonna address Norm's point, that some part of the important projects don't get lost in the bigger, what some view as a bigger process.
Yeah, you certainly wouldn't want to lose the focus from either organization,
Right.
because both are very important.
Or have it so large it's cumbersome.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I'm sure you have it.
I mean, even in the pros plan, I mean, it appeared to me that Chris's initial responses to it, you know, from what he has taken away from the community feedback is parks and preserves and pathways and alternative transportation are all very important issues that we should continue to, you know, maintain a focus on and expand.
But with Anna here now, is it
She's
not
not
possible
smiling yet.
I know.
that, in fact, she is our focus point, and the two committees can still do what they do, and Anna is the real coalescing of that information? Maybe.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I don't know. I'm not
Okay.
saying, you know, it seems to me like it could work, but you know, if it's better to remain independent, you know, I think there's an argument to be made for that as well.
Patrick or Norman, and Patrick and I had this discussion, are people's terms up at the end of the year, at the end of the calendar year, or do you know, Norman, do you remember those?
In our group, it's mostly November.
Oh, they expire in November.
I think ours are December.
Okay. I remember we looked at that, but then I couldn't recall what the dates were, so, okay, some of the parks are in November and some of TAP, you think are December.
Yeah,
So
but that either one implies that we've got a decision needs to be made quickly.
quickly, okay.
So Patrick, from a board perspective, would you be looking for a recommendation from the committees?
Yeah, I believe so. I think that my understanding is that Roy and Andy have discussed the potential of merging, and if that's the direction that you want to go to, I think it would be appropriate to make a proposal to the board in that regard. Now, if you think it's inappropriate or, you know, unworkable, we can maintain it as it is, and then, you know, obviously, we're going to need new membership when the term's in for some people if they're falling off. But I think we're looking towards TAP and PAB to make a recommendation for how you want to proceed. And if you want to remain independent, then that's the you know, I don't think proposal is necessary. Then we'll just continue on as business as usual.
It seems like if that's, we should probably look something back next, this, you know, as committee members start thinking about this. Question is if we do something next meeting, is that too late?
Say that again, Ryan?
If we, because right now, obviously, we don't have that as an agenda item on here that, you know, pass any type of resolution in that regards, one way or the other. But if we do take it up in our next meeting, which is November 9th, is that going to be too late?
No, I think that'd be fine. Although I must tell you that my term ends on the board in November. So, you know, it may go to some other contact on the board as opposed to me.
Okay.
I'm still there in November, but then on November 20th, I believe is when my term ends.
But it would still have to be in form of a recommendation that the board do this or that, correct?
I mean, yeah.
And then, and you know, we could put in our recommendation, we recommend that the board do this or that, and you know, ask for applications from anyone who's interested in joining these two groups. And then, you know, anyone from our group who's interested, they submit their letter to the board or whatever.
Right. And then we could do it with certain, you know, if it happens, we'd like to see X, Y, and Z also, you know what I mean?
As far as priorities or as
Yeah.
far as structure,
Mhm.
yeah,
Things to consider.
right.
It's normal.
Probably be a joint resolution between the two groups too.
That's a good idea.
When's the next park? You guys have another meeting this month, October?
No, we've had our monthly meeting,
And yours is
the
in,
1st of November.
okay. good discussion. Thanks everyone for sharing your thoughts on this. Yeah, I think we should probably put something together for an agenda item next meeting. I guess I welcome people's input as we move forward for our next meeting. And if there's certain things, if we were to stay separate, certain things, and if we were to be combined, are there certain things you'd like to see in that resolution to, let the board know as it moves forward? Anna, do you have anything on this? I know it's sort of tough because since you're just new to all this, but any insight?
I do have one thing that I would share on the potential merging, which is if we didn't end up merging, I would love to have a very regular meeting with a member of TAP and Parks Advisory Board. I know that in the past this has existed, but I think that would be a great way to kind of keep everyone in the loop. So I'm open to the merging as well. I've heard a few established folks say that that would be a great idea. But yeah, if it didn't happen, I think I'd be comfortable with that option as well.
Yeah, I do agree with Anna that it's really important that both groups communicate well so everybody understands what everybody else is doing. And I think that was one of the reasons why the merge was considered in the first place, because sometimes Parks is not aware of what TAP is up to and vice versa.
Sometimes.
So, I mean, that would be one benefit of,
Although Norm does a great job of doing his updates. They're very helpful.
Yeah.
But
Yeah, I know,
it is hard to really know what's going on.
yeah.
We were looking to hire a consultant to look at the Van Curler connection from Dexter here on Metro Park. Took this board and then Parks board, or went to the Township board, which is, depending on the timing, when we meet once a month, and you guys, Parks meets once a month, and the Township board obviously meets more than that. But it's just sort of like, it just became a little cumbersome. We missed our meeting, so we missed your meeting, so sort of like just added some. So yeah, I think we got the proposal back in, I don't know, but it took 2 or 3 months to finally get our consultant on board.
Right.
Okay. With that, we'll move on to TAP budget discussion. It's sort of a moving target. What we're trying to do is get a handle on how much revenue and how much we've spent this year. Because what we'd like to do, I think last year, budget time is in March, so we're trying to get stuff together in January, February. And I think you all recall our meeting last year. We had to make a decision that day. Do we want to do X or Y type thing? So that's why we're trying to get our arms around, how much revenue are we getting, can we expect? How much have we spent? Is there money left over from last year? And what are some of the priorities moving forward for 2023? I know one of the things that is sort of a carryover from the TAP is the work on Uplands and Sow Ridge and that area. Because right now we're just doing the design. I think we put money in this year for construction, but which obviously is not going to happen. So, ideally that money get carried over. So that means it's still a priority. Some of the money that we'd spent set aside, TAP funds or Parks money, whatever the TAP spending was for Z Road. Obviously, Z Road is 98% done. This phase 4. So those, but need to look back and we budgeted X. Do we spend X plus something or X minus something? Figure out if there's money left over. Looking forward and what are the things we want to get going on, as far as if there's something we want to look at in design, going on design for in 23 to something like build in 24 or those type of things. I think that's, it's like we sort of ask for a lot of things, but we got to be realistic. How much money is it really going to be available for the committee? So I think that's what our goal is. And I think we're getting there as far as how much money we have. So I think I'm optimistic by next meeting we'll have a better handle on all those because we've seen some numbers coming through. I know Patrick, you guys have more on that, but I think that's looking at the information that's been shared, that's where I had to look at it.
Yeah. Did you receive the spreadsheet that I sent this morning that I've received from Sandy?
Yeah,
Yeah.
2 pages.
Yeah.
Is that what Bob showed us? Did Bob show
I
us?
know I've received a lot of emails, so I can't, I've seen different spreadsheets, so I'm trying to remember which.
Revenue and expenditure report?
Yes. Yeah. So,
400.
Did you share that with the full committee?
so from my understanding from what she said in her email, because I looked at this and I said, oh, it appears to me that we have ending fund balance of 396,000. But she indicated that there was 300,000 that had to be removed from that. And I wasn't really clear. I didn't know if you understood what she was referring to or not, Roy. In that message, I need to get some more clarification on that. But the takeaway I got from her email was that there's approximately $92,000 currently in fund balance, but that there will be an additional amount of money that's going to arrive in December based on the winter taxes. So it'll be supplemented at that point. So that's the Parks and Pathways Fund.
Okay.
So, yeah, that's.
Yeah, I think it should be the goal the next, prior to the next meeting, get that, everyone does their accounting a little differently. So trying to understand all the different columns and understand where we are.
Yes.
Be helpful so we can, come back here and, not that I want to worry about, is it 10 cents or 22 cents, but is it 350 or 250 or 150 or $50,000? So we have an idea of what's, moving forward on that. Any other further discussion on that? Thank you, Elise, for, trying to track some of that stuff down. Now we have it's a starting point. New business, old business. We talked about renewing township-wide road initiative update. We have been meeting as a subcommittee looking at that as far as township-wide special assessment district that was done in 2013. I guess for the most part, I think the committee's thinking it does make sense to have revenue, for roads and transportation in the future. Is that a township-wide special assessment district, or is that a millage, or is that some other revenue source? We have really zeroed in on that. I guess the first question in my mind is there still going to be a need, 23 to 33 for roads? And I think the subcommittee's answer is yes, because it's not like roads are fixed and they're done forever. Because of like anything, it continues to deteriorate, and there's costs associated with it. Culverts are continuing to deteriorate just like roads, and you may have emergency culvert failure, and if you don't have money set aside for that, it's going to come out of the township general fund, which you might be able to do for one time, but if over the course of 10 years, that can add up to substantial money. So I think that's what we're trying to get our arms around. Still is a need that improving roads. That's because we haven't spent money on. Steve or Patrick, anything else?
I want to add one thing that we believe it's really important to retain the maintenance effort. We've invested a lot of money in our roads. They degrade if we don't take care of them. We have a bunch of neighborhood SADs that were done. And we need to make for sure that those roads are maintained, and if we don't provide maintenance, they degrade much more quickly, and it would be a shame to lose that investment. Second thing is regarding, I'm thinking of David Reed's comment. We have not thought about what recommendation we would make. about SAD versus millage. We're still studying that. And ultimately, that's the board's choice.
You raise a good point. Yeah, we've invested nearly, I think, $5 million to get our roads in the condition they are, and it makes sense. It's sort of like you invest all this money in your vehicle and in your house or whatever, and then all of a sudden you can just stop putting money in. It makes sense to continue to do that because now it's more incremental cost. You improve it to a decent condition versus where they were before. I don't know, Steve, anything else?
No, I'm on board with that.
Road funding 101. I'm not sure, I didn't bring anything on that, so I guess I'll probably pass on that. Wrapping up and creating a to-do list.
So I've got two things at this point. One, we want, if at all possible, joint recommendation from Parks and TAP about our future. And we're going to bring some solid numbers and reliable numbers for the budget to help us think through that next process.
Mm-hmm.
And I also hope that maybe we can provide a much more together draft than the one that's in the current board packet for maybe a meatier discussion rather than just an update.
Yeah, because it would be interesting. I'm just thinking back on the budget thing. It would be interesting to see, because one of the couple of line items in there were the Scio Ridge and Uplands Drive. And then, like I said, I know we budgeted, I think it was $200,000. I know we've only spent less than 20,000. So it seems like that money should be just carrying forward. So that's where, if we can do a deep dive by the time next meeting, just to get our arms around it. Because a lot of times items might be put in the budget, but they really, expenditures really haven't spent on them yet. There's no construction besides the Z Road, and I think maybe some expenditures in parks at Marshall and some of the other things, but yeah. And same with Van Curler's, really trying to get the engineering started. We're just, probably going to get that moving forward.
As far then, Patrick, as doing a recommendation to combine the two groups, would it be helpful? I don't know who in this group would be responsible for doing it, but would it be helpful to get from the members of this group and you would get from the members of your group sort of ideas about, just maybe 2 or 3 things. For instance, I'm just sitting here and I'm writing down maybe a recommendation on the number of members total so that it's not out of control large, but it's large enough to have representation. It would have to be an odd number so we can break ties.
So which side gets the numbers?
It would, we'd have to recommend maybe, 3 members with an interest in parks, 3 members with an interest in pathways. We'd have to have at least 1 independent member that can, kind of float. And then I would say maybe a recommendation, this is a long recommendation, but I'm sure it could be made shorter. Not more than 1 meeting a month, but then everyone meets one person from each of those interest groups meets with Anna separately. So she has all the information on both, and she can kind of do a report to the whole group at the monthly meeting, and then the discussion can go from there. But I'm sure other people have other ideas. Those are mine, just sitting here and hearing you all talk.
So Norm, you've thought a lot about this. What else would you add to that?
Yeah, I've thought about it. I'm not sure you came up with any good solutions. It seems like you need expertise on practical matters in the parks group, price of lumber, you put a wetland boardwalk in, things like that. And when you get up to the TAP things, it's more about the rules and regulations for public structures like bus stops and roads and sidewalks, and we don't have those constraints so much in the park. So it's a mixing of different levels of granulation of the information that you need to be dealing with. And, you know, I can't really help much in the TAP world other than say, you know, we want to get the parks linked and things like that. Similarly, I don't know that the TAP people would have an interest in how many, you know, tons of garbage we've taken out, you know, type of thing. So it's a hard one to answer because the scales are so different. What you're doing in terms of
The type of
money and this-
expertise is very different.
yeah, and what you're trying to provide to the populace. So,
But the idea is the reason for this because it's drawing from the same village? Is that why we're
That's
part of it? Okay, just because, so do you think it would work to have, say, 3 people with parks type expertise? 4 people with TAP type expertise, 4, something like that, and then, you know, kind of have those groups.
I would worry about dilution of expertise.
I see, okay.
You know, I mean, it's taken me a year to find out what you folks are talking about most of the time. And just because I'm unfamiliar with those rules and regulations and funding sources and things like that. And, you know, it's similar, someone would have to figure out, you know, okay, well, how to do slopes and trails and eradicate noxious weeds and things like that. And it's a whole different level of information that you have to have available at your fingertips. I think Anna may be the key to it. She's the central processing facility now that everything has to go through. And so it may be that she is the most important linkage between the two groups. And maybe what we have to do is have set up a regular program, regular meetings with her that the two groups can pass the information along. And maybe she has to have volunteers to help her integrate that information.
Would it make sense to have, so the next meeting that you all are having, to have a couple, 3 representatives from TAP attend that meeting, and that there's actually a discussion about some of these issues that have been raised? And there's a lot of pluses, there are some concerns, and probably best to have the people at the table to work through those.
So invite some of us ourselves to their meeting, maybe invite some of them to our meeting.
Yeah.
That might be good. And try to talk to Andy.
We've all not been in the same room.
Right, yeah. So, you know, we've had a couple meetings together, but for the most part, no. I do know from experiences, you gotta be careful, you make a committee too large, and then the quorum number gets up, and then, okay, wow, we expanded this to 15 members, and then you need, you know, 8 members there, and then you can't, you know, right, and then you don't have a quorum, and then, yeah, so.
And then the discussions just can get out of hand too.
Right, so it's fine that, I'm not sure what the right number is, but I just know sometimes it's like people are like, oh, let's just, you know, we'll combine both of them, have 8 from one and some from the other, then it's like, okay, and trying to manage that many people can be a challenge. And then if people can't make it, then the quorum numbers is pretty high and can be a challenge, but no, I think that makes some sense, Patrick, what you're proposing. I try to reach out to Andy. Your meeting's on, you said November 1st, okay.
To Liz's point earlier, then, do we need to structure or make a certain determination about this meeting so that we can all participate? Are we going to be public comments in their meeting and vice versa, or can we structure the meeting so we can have free dialogue back and forth? Is that a technicality we need to talk about, or?
I think Roy was just saying, you would invite yourself to their meeting and they would invite, you know, it's sort of.
But Steve raised a good question. If we're there as a guest, are we really just the public and we get to speak 3 minutes at the beginning of the meeting and sit on the outside for the other 90 minutes? Yeah. I know we had joint meeting before, we never really thought about that, but yeah, in today's.
Well, it's worth doing it the way we're supposed to do it.
Maybe if we're invited, then we can speak a least, I mean, we don't need to speak on all the other items, but it seems like at least during that discussion. And
I think make this the first item on the agenda, so that in each case,
Right, so as long as it's on our agenda, it's an open sort of discussion, more or
I
less.
don't
Is
know,
that-
I wouldn't get it.
No,
no,
I know how that works. Don't ask me, I know exactly.
Okay, we'll have to sort that out between now and next Parks meeting. Yes. Our next meeting is this November 9th, which is the day after the election, right? Hopefully, will the election equipment still be here?
don't know. Would that prevent us from meeting?
Not,
I don't think it would. 24 hours later.
because since we're not right before, sometime right before the election, they'll want you, I guess, after. We'll probably-
I'll put that on my to-do list and check in with Jessica.
I know the board revised their meetings because of the election, so I'm not sure if that,
But I think yours was like direct conflict, right?
yeah, not sure if that would follow through on the 9th or not.
So I think the day after will probably good. I just want to at least put it out there. As we're done. Try to show up here and find out. No further discussion, is a motion to or all in favor, say aye. Aye. Needs adjourned at 5:07. Thank you.
Thanks for making the time.